Welcome to worship with the community of First Unitarian Church. My name is Peg Pigeon, and I'll be serving as your worship associate this morning. Whether you are attending online or in person, I'm glad you've chosen to join us for worship today. I offer up a special welcome to visitors. If you are joining us online, we encourage you to say hello and chat with other online attendees. Let's take a moment to say hello and welcome the people sitting around you. Hi. Okay. How do you stop it? Okay.
Sarah come in.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and continue. This congregation is an inclusive community that listens, engages, inspires, and acts. Our mission is to foster the whole person with compassion and justice. We are on many journeys, but together we are one church. We are a community of all ages and abilities with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities and diverse and cultural class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring you to your whole self into this community. And our speaker today is our very own seminary student, Melissa Gibson. I want to remind everyone that we have a book in the back of the church where you can share your joys and concerns that will be lifted up in worship today. For those online, feel free to use the online comments to share your joys and concerns. As always, we'll share coffee and conversation together in the common room downstairs after the service. And we have a parking validator in the foyer for those who park in the garage. We also affirm that our church occupies the traditional treaty lands of the Omaha and Otoe, Missouri tribal nations and express our respect to the northern Ponca, Winnebago, and Santee Sioux tribes. Please join us in giving voice to and supporting local causes, charities, and rights of Indigenous people. And now, our prelude. And now the lighting of the chalice. Jonathan Gibson will be coming up to light the chalice. And as the chalice is lit, I invite you all to join in the chalice lighting words. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. And Jonathan will also be lighting the sabbatical candle. This is the 6th week of our minister's sabbatical. We trust that this candle will light her way back to us come November. Thank you, Jonathan. So our call to worship today is by Erica Hewitt. As we enter into worship, Put away the pressures of the world that ask us to perform, to take up masks and to put on brave fronts. Silence the voices that ask you to be perfect. This is a community of compassion and welcoming. You do not have to do anything to earn the love contained within these walls. You do not have to be braver or smarter or stronger, better than you are in this moment to belong here with us. You only have to bring the gift of your body, no matter how able, your seeking mind, no matter how busy, your animal heart, no matter how broken. Bring all that you are and all that you love to this hour together. Let us worship together. Our opening hymn is number 188. It's a rather short one. We're going to sing through it 3 times. It's in the gray hymnal. Thank you. Each week, half of the loose currency in the offering plate is donated to a local cause so more people can do more good. Our Share the Plate recipient for today is Great Plains Black History Museum, located in North Omaha. Their mission is to educate while preserving the achievements of African American history on the plains. So we have a lovely guest today, and her name is Rocio Valla. Close? Okay. This song, this offertory song, is in Spanish. And she said the song is written by a man whose very dear friend is going away to be a priest. And he's about to dedicate his life to his service to the priesthood. And that is kind of a love song, but for friends. Thank you. Thank you. That was lovely. So, once again today, we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to be sure they've written down their joys and concerns in the back of the sanctuary. Or for those who don't want to share out loud, you can place a stone in this collective chalice in the front and join silently with others in the community. Those watching online can still put items to be shared in the comments to be read aloud, and while you do so, we'll quietly sing hymn 1002 in the teal hymnal, Comfort Me.
Good morning. I have both a joy and a concern to share with you. My joy is that today is my 78th birthday. I can scarcely believe that I am now 78 years old. I started making good trouble during my college years in the 1960s, and here I am, almost 60 years later, still trying to make good trouble. My concern is the state of our democracy. I usually request no presents on my birthday, but this year I decided to break precedent. The greatest gift that I could receive would be your commitment to do 78 things in the coming year to retrieve our democracy. Some ideas for positive actions could include: if you have $78, donate them to an organization that promotes and fights for the preservation of our democracy. If $78 is beyond your budget, please consider donating $7.80. Or write 78 postcards between now and the May primary. Or contact 78 friends and acquaintances to urge them to register to vote, and then urge them to vote. Or make signs and march in 78 events. Or write 78 letters to editors of newspapers, magazines, and post on social media. Or make 78 calls to your local, state, and federal representatives and hold them accountable for supporting and passing laws in defense of democracy. Well, you get the point. And thank you for whatever you may decide to do in the coming year.
Thank you, Linda. And this is pretty much on the same vein. This is from Judy Younger for our immigrant friends and neighbors who are being terrorized by ICE. Thanks, Judy. Colin?
From Madeline McPeck, saying, "This is Madeline and kindness, wanting to let everyone know we made it to Vancouver. Thank you for your support. We could not have done it without you." From the Open Omaha team, thank you to everyone who worked so hard to make our beautiful building shine for all of Omaha to see. And from Elaine Wells, it is with great sadness that I must announce that Scott Kemper has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He will appreciate your kind thoughts, cards, and calls. Please send cards to Elaine Wells, 5005 Reed Street, 68152, as we don't know where he will be in hospice. That is it.
Thank you, Colin. Well, we'll move forward with our service with our contemplative reading. It's a love letter from the afterlife by Andrea Gibson. My love, I was so wrong. Dying is the opposite of leaving. When I left my body, I did not go away. That portal of light was not a portal to elsewhere, but a portal to here. I am more here than I ever was before. I am more with you than I ever could have imagined. So close, you look past me when wondering where I am. It's okay. I know that to be human is to be far-sighted, but feel me now, walking the chambers of your heart, pressing my palms to the soft walls of your living. Why did no one tell us that to die is to be reincarnated in those we love while they are still alive? Ask me the altitude of heaven, and I will answer, how tall are you? In my back pocket is a love note with every word you wish you'd said. At night, I sit ecstatic at the loom, weaving forgiveness into our worldly regrets. All day I listen to the radio of your memories. Yes, I know every secret you thought too dark to tell me, and love you more for everything you feared might make me love you less. When you cry, I guide your tears toward the garden of kisses I once planted on your cheek, so you know they are all perennials. Forgive me for not being able to weep with you. So for our sermon presentation today, we welcome our own Melissa Gibson, our membership and office manager. Melissa is almost done with her Master of Divinity degree from Star King School for Ministry. She holds the aspirant status with the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. Melissa has been very active with First UU since May of 2022. Prior to that, she was a member in her home congregation in Shreveport, Louisiana. Melissa facilitates our church's new member programming, and today's sermon will elaborate on that work. Please join me in welcoming Melissa Gibson to our pulpit.
Good morning. So when I started at First Unitarian as the membership coordinator, one of the first things I noted was a lack of signage. We pointed people to the common room or the Merit Lounge, but we had no consistent signs, and in some cases, no signs at all. When people are visiting a church, one of the first things they want to know is, where is the bathroom? And if they have a child hanging around their neck or around their leg, or both, the next thing they want to know is, where is the nursery? We didn't have directions at either entrance pointing to those things. So I worked with other staff to create signage for the building and felt pretty accomplished. But then a strange thing happened. Shortly after affixing the signs around the church, I had several longtime members ask me questions. That room has a name, they'd ask. Who's Robert Weston? And why is the nursery named that? And who's she? I joked, kind of, that maybe they needed a refresher on their First Unitarian history. I said, maybe you should come to the next Pathways class. We cover all of this, but so far, only the current board president, Sherry Connor, has taken me up on this offer. But if you're interested, the next Pathways to Membership class is September 28th after the service. While it's designed for potential new members, I take old-timers too, and we have snacks. You can come meet the newcomers and brush up on your First Unitarian history trivia. So this is your church, and you should really know who all these dud people are. They're your dud people. They're your church family, your theological ancestors. They laid the foundation, metaphorically, and in some cases literally, for where and what this congregation is today. They all walked into and out of this building. Those front doors, they sat in these pews. A few of them, perhaps all of them, at one time or another, stood at this pulpit. So who were they? Who are all these dead people? We'll begin our story shortly after the conclusion of World War II, as all of our current room namesakes come from people who were active in the congregation in the 1950s and 1960s. The Merit Lounge, the cozy one with the couches where some of the church's historical documents and photos decorate the walls, is named in honor of Dr. George Merritt and his wife, Lulu Merritt. In the early 1950s, baby boomers, were actually babies and small children. And their massive numbers were overwhelming schools and churches and all kinds of community gathering spaces. To put that into perspective, women were having about 3.8 kids in that era, compared to just 1.6 today. So there were a whole lot of kids running around. So in 1951, the church voted to raise $45,000. That's more than $500,000 in today's money, to create a religious education wing. Dr. and Mrs. Merritt were key figures in executing the church's capital campaign and also donated generously. Dr. Merritt was a prominent medical doctor specializing in eye health and osteopathy, and thanks to their contributions of time, talent, and treasure, the Merit Lounge was named in their honor. Next to the Merit Lounge is the Robert Weston Classroom, named in honor of Reverend Robert Weston, who was a minister of this church from 1960 to 1964. While that's a fairly short amount of time, it was a very intense 4 years for Reverend Weston, the congregation, and the Unitarian denomination at large. In 1961, two religious institutions, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Association, in 1961, Two religious institutions, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, merged to form one denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, the central organization for UU churches and fellowships throughout the United States. The faiths work to combine styles of worship, governance, finances, traditions, and values, a time of creativity, but also some tension. Beyond the denominational challenges, Reverend Weston's years were overlapped with the Kennedy administration. We're talking Cold War tensions, Bay of Pigs, Vietnam, civil rights, the space race, and then JFK himself was assassinated. It was, so I'm told, an interesting time and gives me some hope for today. Anyways, Reverend Weston stood at this pulpit during all that. If you attended member John Goldner's sermon a few weeks ago, John shared some of his memories of Reverend Weston, who married him and Kaylin when the leadership from their religious traditions of their youth declined to preside over their mixed faith marriage. Reverend Weston was a veteran of both world wars, serving as a member of the U.S. force in World War I, and after being ordained as a Unitarian minister in 1929, served as a Navy chaplain in World War II, where he witnessed firsthand the aftermath of the bombing of Hiroshima. Reverend Weston was an outspoken force for social justice in the local media, making steady appearances in the Omaha Star and on public radio. Some reactions to him garnered fan mail that accused him of leftist treason and said he'd find a warm welcome in hell. But Reverend Weston, unsurprisingly, was not deterred and continued to speak loudly against atomic war, the Ku Klux Klan, and the work of Senator Joseph McCarthy. During his time at First, Reverend Weston noted the city's sprawl out west and urged the congregation to move so Unitarian Universalism could have a broader reach into the city. Just like today, that idea was wildly unpopular amongst congregants. But the board and Reverend Weston did compromise on purchasing a second location at 117th and Center, establishing the West Meeting House in September of 1963. 10 years later, the site was sold and relocated to a larger property at 119th and Center, which eventually became its own independent entity, the Second Unitarian Church of Omaha. As member Dave Richardson writes in his book, Pillars and Dreams, Second Unitarian has continued to thrive as a partner to First Unitarian thanks to the start given to them by Reverend Robert Terry Weston. I didn't know this moved. It does. As we head downstairs to Religious Education Wing, we find the Whitney Young Room and the Margaret Bunkner Young Nursery. The Whitney Young Room is most recently used as a gathering space for our teenagers, but previously served as a more formal meeting space. Recently, the nursery underwent an extensive renovation, very gratefully, to address ongoing moisture issues and general modernizing, and looks better than ever. These spaces are named for the Young family who moved to Omaha in 1950. When Whitney Young was selected to head the city's chapter of the Urban League, he worked with Omaha leaders, some of whom were members of First Unitarian, to pass the city's first non-segregation clause in public housing. Whitney Young often attended black churches in the area as part of his Urban League efforts, so it was his wife, Margaret, who was most often seen at church on Sundays. Margaret taught Sunday school, which their daughter, Marcia, attended. I actually got to speak to Marcia earlier this week. She spoke warmly of her father, calling him the family extrovert. Marcia continued to attend Unitarian Universalist churches all her life and is currently a member of the Fourth Universalist Society in New York City. Whitney Young was known as the power broker of civil rights movement and worked closely with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the one-day Congressman John Lewis. Mr. Young went on to become president of the National Urban League and also advised in the Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon administrations. He is notably recognized as a co-author of Johnson's War on Poverty, which led to the establishment of programs such as Head Start. Whitney Young once said, "We desire to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, but in the past, we've had no straps, and in most cases, no boots." The Young family moved to Atlanta in 1954, and shortly thereafter to the New York City area. Unfortunately, Whitney Young died at just 49, an accidental drowning while visiting Nigeria. President Richard Nixon delivered one of the eulogies at Whitney Young's funeral, starting with, "It is customary on such an occasion for one who has the honor to deliver the eulogy to say that we are gathered here to pay our last respects to the deceased. I do not say that today. I say rather that today a grateful nation will pay its respects to Whitney Young by continuing the work which he dedicated his entire life." Young's widow, Margaret Buckner Young, was very impressive in her own right. She worked at Spelman College and published numerous articles and children's books that focused on addressing race, racism, and African American history. She also worked with the United Nations in strengthening our country's relationships abroad with Nigeria and China. Mrs. Young continued to be involved in the National Urban League and supported many efforts that commemorated her husband's legacy until her passing in 2009 at the age of 88. So quite a powerful couple, and I feel humbled to walk these floors that they also walked. Our final room is a Reeb room. While it's currently used as storage space for our music and audiovisual equipment, it was once the office, many years ago, for the Director of Religious Education, named after Reverend James Reeb, a Unitarian martyr. If our denomination canonized people, I believe Reverend James Reeb would be the patron saint of Unitarian Universalism. Reverend Reeb was born just down the road in Wichita, Kansas in 1927. He started his career as a Presbyterian minister and transferred his ordination to Unitarianism in 1957. Upon Reverend Weston's departure, Reverend Reeb interviewed for the minister position, which ultimately went to Reverend Van Vanstrom. But the report from the minister selection committee at the time seems to suggest the congregation was equally impressed with the young James Reeb. Taking a post far from home, Reeb moved his family east and went to work for the Boston Metro Public Housing Program. He advocated for tenants' rights for people of all races and classes and opted to live in Roxbury, a predominantly black area of Boston at the time. Reverend Reeb's daughter, Anne, recalls that her father, quote, was adamant that you could not make a difference for African Americans while living comfortably in a white community. In February 1965, Jimmy Lee Jackson, an unarmed black man who served as a bishop for his church, was marching peacefully for voting rights in Marion, Alabama, when he was beaten and shot by state troopers. Jackson died 8 days later. In reaction, organizers planned 3 Selma to Montgomery marches. On March 7th, more than 600 people attempted to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge towards Montgomery and were greeted with batons and tear gas, an event known as Bloody Sunday. The next day, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called for his fellow clergy members to show up in droves for the upcoming March 9th event, and several hundred did, which included about 45 Unitarian ministers, including Reverend James Reeb. The March 9th protest, which boasted about 2,500 people, was cut short, however, due to a restraining order from federal courts. The marchers met the line of troopers at the bridge, prayed, and turned around. This day was nicknamed Turnaround Tuesday. That evening, Reverend Reeb had dinner at Walker's Cafe, an integrated restaurant, with fellow Unitarian ministers, Reverend Clark Olson and Reverend Orloff Miller. After eating, the men walked toward Brown Chapel AME Church for a mass meeting. The ministers were taunted and attacked by a group of white men with clubs, cracking Reverend Reeb's skull. Many years later, in the article for UU World, Reverend Olson recalled, quote, Selma was fear, re-experienced fairly often in telling friends or family about the events of that terrible night in Selma. The men coming across the street, shouting angry words, carrying a club, waiting at the clinic while the doctor examined Jim, fearing Jim's death as he squeezed my hand more tightly as his head pain increased and before he sank into unconsciousness, fearing for all of us when our ambulance had a flat tire just after leaving Selma's city limits on the way to the hospital in Birmingham, and the ambulance radio telephone wouldn't work, especially fearing when a car full of white men pulled up behind us on the country road, then followed us back to town while we drove on the rim of our flat tire, headed for a phone that would bring a replacement ambulance. Fear turned to terror when the car full of men parked next to our waiting ambulance and walked around the ambulance, knocking on the windows. I thought that they might bury us in a watery ditch that night. The replacement ambulance did eventually arrive and delivered the men to Birmingham, where Reverend Reeb went into a coma and died at 38, leaving behind his wife and 4 young children. MLK delivered one of the several eulogies at the funeral for Reverend Reeb. He said, "The world is aroused over the murder of James Reeb, for he symbolized the forces of goodwill in our nation. He demonstrated the conscience of the nation. He was an attorney for the defense of the innocent in the court of world opinion. He was a witness to the truth that men of different races and classes might live, eat, and work together as brothers. James Reeb could not be accused of being only concerned about justice for Negroes away from home. He and his family live in Roxbury, Massachusetts, a predominantly Negro community. They devoted their lives to aiding families in low-income housing areas. Again, we must ask the question, why must good men die for doing good? The death of a white clergyman, no doubt, compounded the outrage and attention for civil rights. The third march from Selma to Montgomery took place from March 21st to the 25th, and attendance grew to 25,000 people along the 54-mile route. Protesters were escorted and protected by the Alabama National Guard under federal control, the FBI, and federal marshals. It's estimated that 140 Unitarian clergy, about a fifth of all ordained Unitarian ministers, and about 300 Unitarian lay people were in attendance. In August of that same year, the civil rights movement saw its success with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. However, in December of 1965, despite eyewitness testimony, the 3 men tried for the murder of Reverend Reeb were acquitted by an all-white and all-male jury. Officially, the murder of Reverend James Reeb is unsolved. So that's a hard one, I know, and we're not going to end on that note. So we have one more room now, which reveals our newest namesake. We recently added a classroom back into circulation this year after our minister, Reverend Sherry Woodbury, and our coordinator of children and family programming, Christina Strong, opted to combine their workspaces inside the minister's office. The newly opened space is currently being used by a middle school religious education class and will eventually be a multi-purpose meeting room once we have finalized some furniture and decor details. With the board's approval, the space is now known as the Grace Room, named in honor of Grace Holdridge, who is often credited with the church's along with the church's Women's Alliance for saving First Unitarian. Give me a minute. So Grace Holdridge was born Frances Rogers Kimball and arrived in Omaha before the city was even established. Her parents were founding members of the congregation in 1869, and they signed the Articles of Organization that you can see in the Merritt Lounge. Holdridge's childhood diaries and meeting minutes tell the early days of Omaha and the church. Holdridge's dedication to First Unitarian continued into adulthood when she served as the secretary of the Women's Alliance in the 1910s, when the church was in the midst of dwindling membership and a financial crisis. In her own words, quote, "It was decided to keep together and do whatever the Women's Alliance could do to hold the scattered remnants of the church together. There were 19 names on the membership roll, but even so small a beginning might prove the nucleus of the church of the future. If we could do nothing more, we would set ourselves the task of seeking out Unitarians and asking them to join us in the search for others." After this meeting, in just 5 years, from 1912 to 1917, the church grew from 19 members to over 100. As one of First Unitarian's original daughters, someone who grew up in this congregation and solidified its existence, it seems apropos to honor Grace's work by naming a room in the religious education wing of the church after her, a space for budding Unitarian Universalists. We're still working on the space, but if you haven't poked your head back there in a minute, take a look. It's next to the Robert Weston classroom at the back of the hall. Even as is, it's been a productive spot for our summer programming for our youth. So these are your room namesakes. These are some of, but certainly not all of, your dead people. So I am indebted to member Dave Richardson's book, Pillars and Dreams, for much of the information I am sharing, as well as our many conversations and his mentorship about the church's history. So Dave, thank you. I will end with the words from Reverend Robert Weston's poem, The Web of Life. There is a living web that runs through us to all the universe, linking us each with each, and through all life on to the distant stars. Each knows a little corner of the world and lives as if this were all his. We no more see the farther reaches of the threads than we see the future, yet they are all there. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe. Have a great week.
So thank you. Our closing hymn today is 1028, Teal Hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. Our closing words are by Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear. The stakes are very high. But take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. And so Rocio Valla, along with Judy Unger, will be doing the, what is this called? Postlude. Thank you very much.
Amen.